The Force will be with you always, at least if Disney has anything to say about it. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and first of all I want to show you, this is one of my Christmas gifts, is this t-shirt which says Star Wars 1977, and I wore it to go and see that film, which we'll be talking about in this video. Also, you may notice over my shoulder here a little sign that dad joke loading, please wait. I'll try to keep the dad jokes to a minimum, though. Having seen the Rise of Skywalker, there were a couple of things that struck me about this film. First of all is that I think that it was a tribute to the Star Wars pictures that we've seen. They came out with something that was different than what we've seen before, somewhat different, but also full of Easter eggs of prior movies, and all in all, a very action-packed and entertaining film. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. Now, there were some critics that believe that it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't a fitting end to this 9-picture saga, but the fact of the matter is, who could have written it? Who could have come up with the necessary script to make this big enough? Because I mean, you take into account some of the biggest films ever made, some of the most popular films ever made, and how are you going to take it 40 years later and make it all work? So I think they did as well as they could. They did fan service throughout, all kinds of Easter eggs, like the throne room of Palpatine, the not quite explanation, but the fact that Palpatine is back goes back to the old film trope of if you didn't see him die, he's not dead. And Palpatine was thrown down a shaft by Darth Vader, and you assumed he was gone, but he managed to climb back out. And it was shown later in the film that it's possible to climb back out of these very deep pits. So we have a lot of locations, we have a lot of effects that we have not seen before. We have a new droid who they called Coneface for a time, and the use of the cutesy element, surprisingly to me, was underplayed. They did not try to make the new toy they're going to be selling in this, and they did not try to make it too schmaltzy or to make it too sentimental or to make it too unbelievable. I think that they did what they intended to do with this film, and it also brings up the previous two films, which I didn't like at all, and it makes me think that what these last two films were basically setting up everything that had to happen in this. If I didn't know better, and I might not, is that this film was written first, and then the other two films were written so they could get us to here. So we have all of our characters that we're accustomed to. We have Rey, we have Poe, we have Finn. We bring back some people like Lando and some other people. Of course, we have Chewie and Leia in a... That's the one thing that kind of bothered me about the film, is that every time I saw Carrie Fisher on screen, I knew that they were doing some prestidigitation here, basically taking unused footage from previous films and putting them in, having her say rather generic lines like, "That's good, go do it," "Always remember," and things such as that. And it worked. I mean, it fit. If we didn't know anything about Carrie Fisher, it probably would have been considered kind of a minor part, despite the fact she got top billing on the whole film, which is a good tribute to her, I believe. At any rate, I understand why they kept her in. There was a turning point scene in which she had to be there, and nobody else could have done this. So it makes sense that they put back what they could to bring her in. Otherwise, there was a number of back-of-the-head shots. There were things where people were saying what she had told them to do, and that worked out reasonably well to cover her presence in the film without her having to actually be around to have filmed it. We see other characters that we have seen in all of the previous films. The only thing I don't think we saw was any Mandalorians, despite the fact that The Mandalorian itself has been rumored to be a kind of a tie-in with this picture, unless it was something that was very subtly done in one of the battle scenes. I did not see it. The screen was full, as it has been in many Star Wars pictures. They don't have it where you could cut off both ends of the screen and just have the middle. There's something happening all the way across almost all the time. There was a good battle scene, a ground battle, if you will, that was choreographed very well. The number of ships in the sky in one point of the film was impressive, just for how many special effects shots there had to be in order to do that, how many composites had to be done. Even with digital editing, it would have taken forever to do this unless they had as big a team as they had. And I don't know that there was anybody that worked in California or England that worked in special effects that wasn't on this film. If you look at the credits at the end, it just went on forever, it seems like. It was well constructed. You can believe how it ended. Nobody had to completely change their spots, but there were some underlying things that we've known all along that make sense about it. My concern was, since we did not know where Rey came from, it would be a problem in just assigning her, oh, I'm so-and-so. And that is something that I've seen in other productions where that can be a big problem, of finally giving the smoking man a name in the X-Files. Nobody cared. Why would that be a big reveal, seeing that it was just a name? And that was what I was concerned out here. But what we found out that she was, who we found out she was something that made sense, something that worked with the plot, something that put everything together, and it made it work with all the other characters. So all in all, I think this was well worth the admission price. It's well worth seeing on the big screen. I don't think that if you wait until the video comes out, you're going to get on your home screen, no matter how big your television is, the same impact that this gives. I believe that while it would be difficult to say that this was as good as the original Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back, it certainly was up in the top 5 of the 9 pictures. Let's just put it that way. So with that, I recommend that you see it. I'm glad that I went to see it, and I was pleasantly surprised, even though I wasn't really ready to be surprised at this. I was prepared to say, okay, it's another one. They finally finished that off, and they're now going to beat it to death in another way. There may have been setups for the next movie, but not much that I noticed. What they did was tie up a lot of loose ends, and over 9 pictures, there's a lot of loose ends. And I think they accomplished what they intended to do with this picture. I'd like to know what you think about it, especially if you've seen the film, and let me know in the comments. Otherwise, remember to subscribe and ring the bell so you know when the next video is coming your way. We'll have one very soon as we start on Lost in Space. So, until then, don't go far.